morning again, everyone. My name is Danaé Kokkalis. I'm a communication officer at EHPA. And it's really nice to see all of you joining today for this webinar. Let me get started with the agenda. So we will start with an introduction of EHPA, which I will be giving, followed by an introduction to the Heat Pump KEYMARK scheme and the certification process, which will be given by Tarik. Then Mario Reimbold will be taking the floor with the testing procedure and factory production control. And Tom Lapere will be the voice of the manufacturer. He will be giving a testimonial from Daikin as a certification holder. Then we will end with another presentation from Tarik on the recognition of the scheme, and we'll end with a Q&A session so you can all ask your questions. Before we start, a few housekeeping rules. So your camera and mic are not enabled as a participant, but you can ask your questions in the Q&A chat at the top. So feel free to add any comments or questions you have during the webinar. And the thing you need to remember is that to add the name of the speaker you are addressing your question to so that they can reply. The meeting will be recorded, so you will receive all of the materials after this webinar. So let's start with an introduction to EHPA. You heard me say I'm the communication officer at EHPA, but what is EHPA and how is the Heat Pump KEYMARK linked to it? Well, this is a very brief overview of what we do. We are the European Heat Pump Association, and our mission is to promote heat pump technology across Europe and make it the #1 heating and cooling solution. We have a policy department. They are the voice of the sector and they advocate for the technology, trying to create the best conditions on the market. Then we have the Heat Pump KEYMARK. This is where we sit. And what we are doing as the European Heat Pump Association is we coordinate the Heat Pump KEYMARK Secretariat for the certification. And we also have our projects team. They are involved in many EU-funded projects. So if this is something you're interested in, you can contact them. So now I will pass the floor to Tarik. He is the head of the Secretariat of the Heat Pump KEYMARK scheme, and he will be giving an overview of the certification as well as the process to get certified. So Tarik, if you can take control over the presentation.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Danaé. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, everyone, first, and thank you for joining this webinar. I will directly start my presentation. So, as an introduction to the KEYMARK, so we need to start with the base. The idea of the KEYMARK in general was prepared and set up by Senelec. So today the KEYMARK is owned by Sen and is managed by Sen. And what is important to know is that the KEYMARK quality scheme processes are the base for a certification. And this certification will be granted by following a certification process that will demonstrate and confirm compliance with European standards and eco-design requirements. And in general, the KEYMARK quality mark is issued and delivered by empowered certification bodies. So it's not an auto declaration or second party certification, but it's a true third certification party. So as a rule, because we are still in the general concept of the KEYMARK, as a rule, the KEYMARK was developed and taught by Sen, as I said earlier, to support any quality product or even a service. The only condition is that there is a European standard that exists to support this scheme or this product certification. And as a direct consequence, the KEYMARK is covering several different products from different sectors. So the most common ones that you heard about maybe is the solar products, the photovoltaic. Then you have also the insulation that is quite popular. You will see I have a slide dedicated to these programs, and you can see how important they are. You have the thermostatic radiators, for example, ceramics, and last but not least, we have the heat pumps that are also covered for now almost a decade with the KEYMARK certification. So now let's focus. We were in the KEYMARK concept in general and the ownership, and now we are going to focus on the KEYMARK dedicated to the specific sector of the heat pumps. So we have a KEYMARK certification scheme for heat pumps, and we organized this certification with different groups. So we have the heat pump scheme group that is overlooking at all the certification scheme for heat pumps. We have a steering committee that is working, let's say, in details on the requirements, on the rules, and managing the general certification process. And we have the Secretariat, which I am part of, coordinating the work of the scheme group and the steering committee. But we are not alone doing this. Of course, the scheme group and steering committee are involving all the stakeholders. It means that we are involving the manufacturers, we are involving the testing laboratories, the certification bodies, and of course the European Heat Pump Association, bringing also input, as Danaé explained. We have the policy part, the projects. So we are also feeding this Heat Pump KEYMARK scheme. So all this work all the work done in the context of the Heat Pump KEYMARK certification scheme is supervised by the SEN, that is the owner of the scheme. But to simplify this supervision and the follow-up and the support from SEN is delegating this work to what we call KMO, which is a KEYMARK management organization. So there is very clear and strict conditions to be this KMO. And today, the KMO, for example, is managed by the INSERTCO. Come back to the KEYMARK Secretariat, where I'm sitting. So to give you a brief idea of what we're doing. So we are coordinating, as I said, the working groups, but not only. So our main task is really to work on the recognition, because that's the main idea of SEN creating the KEYMARK, is to harmonize the certification market. And that's the main goal, and that's the main idea, to facilitate the manufacturers to be on the same level of quality, to facilitate the entry to the markets, and also, and not this is also very important, is that it will ease also the consumer to understand when they will buy a product or an equipment in this situation. Our second objective as a KEYMARK Secretariat is also to make the brand known and recognized. So this is also very important from the consumer side, or the regulator, or even the installer, or someone who is controlling an installation, looking at this mark, they will feel confident that this product is monitored and is of a certain level of quality. And finally, the third point is improved database. So we give access, I will explain it later, give access to the information related to the performance of a heat pump. So for the consumer, regulator, again, as installer in general, so they know what's the performance of a heat pump that is certified. So we are trying to ease and to facilitate access to this information through the database that we have. This is a slide to summarize where we are today. So I wanted to share with you some trends for the heat pump as a KEYMARK certification. We have some important points to share with you. Just last year, we recorded the highest number of new certificates since we launched the scheme a decade ago. And also the importance of the KEYMARK certification is increasing due to also the fact that the heat pump is now considered as a solid option to face energy market pressure, decarbonization efforts, and also aligned with all what the European Commission is working and proposing in this context. We have also this growing recognition is due to also solid communication plan from the KEYMARK Secretariat. And finally, this is really the last point in terms of trends, is that we see a growing interest in the scheme from both sides, the manufacturing, but also the testing, inspection, and certification, the TIC sectors, that are really looking at being involved and engaged in this quality scheme. Now I will move to the scope and the products specification classification. I will briefly go through this. If you need more information, you can go to our rules that are online, available online, and you can also ask your certification body if you need more, if you have more questions. So briefly, any heat pump that is used for heating purpose or for domestic hot water production can be covered by this standard, and any types that are coming through innovation can always be included in the scope of the certification. So if you have any type that is not covered by the scope of the certification, you can always address to the Secretariat or directly to the steering committee and propose to have your product, your design included in the certification process. Also, very briefly, the classification, you need to know that we have defined what we call a type. We have also a subtype and a model. So we have three parameters that are defining your heat pump, but the type, subtype, and the model can be discussed with your certification body and the laboratory, and they can really take your range of products to be certified, and they can discuss how they will classify and put them in families according to the type, subtype, and model. So do not hesitate to contact your certification body and your laboratory. In terms of standards and references, so as I said, a KEYMARK can exist only if standards, European standards, are available. And Mario will go through these standards when explaining the type of testing. So you have here the list of all the EN standards that are used and referred to make the testing and to check the conformity and to confirm the performance. But you don't have only standards, European standards, but you have also some Commission regulation that are linked to the eco design, and energy labeling. So what you need to know is that when the KEYMARK was thought and developed, the idea is to align with the eco design requirements. So to make sure that the industry is aligning with the requirements of the eco design. So there is the eco design and then the European standards specifically defining how to test, what to test, in which conditions. Now we move to the certification process. So I explained that the KEYMARK is a third-party certification process. It means that the laboratory and the certification body are completely independent from the manufacturer or the industry that is asking for certification. This is what it means, third-party certification, at the opposite of a second party or a self-declaration. So to guarantee this third-party certification, the certification body needs to be ISO 17065, and the laboratory needs to be ISO 17025. And in the scope of this ISO 17025, they need to have all the standards that I showed two slides earlier. In terms of certification decision, so we have 10 certification bodies today that are capable to and recognized formally to deliver a certification for the KEYMARK for the heat pumps. And we have 30 laboratories capable to also do the testing and provide the test reports to the certification body who will take the certification decision. The good thing for this 30 certification bodies is that geographically we have a nice repartition of these laboratories, so it helps, it facilitates also the choice for any manufacturer who wants to test and certify their product. Now the certification process itself, because I'm talking about certification process, but it's only now that you see the picture. It's a classical certification process. So you have to apply as a manufacturer, or a distributor can also apply by approaching one of the 10 certification bodies that I showed in the slide. Then there will be a discussion about your products. They will start to define the family of products, what needs to be tested, how they will be tested, through which period of time you need to have this testing done, and so on. And after discussing and defining your products to be certified with the certification body, the certification body will then will invite you to approach the inspection part. So we will have to do an audit of the production location, and at the same time we will start to look at the sampling. So we will start to select some equipment to think about the testing. So this equipment will be sent, and then you will move to step number 3 for testing. When the testing will be completed, the test report and the audit report will be sent to the certification body that you choose, and the certification body will finalize the certification process by reviewing the audit report and the test report, and they will make their certification decision and will deliver the certification. Number 5 is the annual monitoring. So KEYMARK is a third-party certification. It means that there is testing, audits, and there is a monitoring. So every year we will have to do an audit, and depending on the configuration that you have and your planning you have for your testing, you will have eventually some testing. It depends, but you will have definitely one annual audit to monitor and to maintain the quality of your products, to maintain the quality of your documents, to maintain the quality of your management quality documents. That's why we do that. It is also sometimes a question that is coming, so I added this slide prepared by Dean Sertko. Thanks to them for that. When I said that you will contact the certification body, you will do the audit, and also part of your work in this process is that as a manufacturer, you will enter on the database you will declare the values of the heat pump, and the certification body will review these values that will be used for the calculation and combined with the testing. So it is important to know that you will have access to a database that is quite clear, relatively clear, to enter your values. But if you have questions, you can always ask the certification body. So it's important to know that you will enter in a database your data that will be reviewed and approved by the certification body. This is another question that is coming sometimes. So as a manufacturer, as the main certificate holder, you will have the certificate, but a distributor, but you will have the opportunity to have this certificate with a different name, or to have a distributor. You can have an extension of your certificate, and this is what they call the OBL. So you can have also an extension of the certificate, and this has to be done with the certificate holder, of course, and the certification body. So you will be a kind of three in the same document, agreeing of what would be the additional name, who will have this extension of the certificate. So this is definitely possible.
Great. Thank you, Tarik, for this thorough overview. I will now introduce Mario Reimbold. So he's a business field manager for heating appliances at TUV Rheinland Energy, and he will present the testing procedure and factory production control. So Mario, will let you take over the presentation. Perfect.
Yes, perfect. Okay. Well, good morning from my side. Mario Reimbold. I'm working for TÜV Rheinland Energy since 15 years now. I'm the manager of the heating department, which deals with several heating technologies. But at the moment, most of the time, it's heat pump technology. Yeah, I would like to give you an overview about the testing procedures and the factory production control within the HP KEYMARK scheme group. I'm also representing the test lab peer group within the HP KEYMARK scheme, and I'm also working as an inspector for the factory inspection control. So I have actually two hats at this moment, and I can tell you a bit from both sides. Just to give you a short overview about the agenda, I would like to focus on the testing procedure regarding the first admission and the surveillance test. Later on, I would like to give a focus on the sound measurements, which is always a very special topic. And then we will talk about the factory production control, which can be combined with the physical inspection and picking. So let's start with the overview. Tarik already mentioned several standards, several types of devices, but I would like to repeat that. And we're talking about electrical driven heat pumps in general. Most of the certified heat pumps are space heating or space cooling heat pumps. Most of them have usually both functions. Of course, second most one is the domestic hot water heat pump technology. So a heat pump which is solely working for domestic hot water. And we, of course, have the combination heater. So a heat pump technology which can deliver both central heating and domestic hot water. Relatively new is the hybrid system technology, which might be attractive for some European countries or for some houses which are currently heating the house with gas, and they would like to not switch completely to a heat pump technology, so they can add a heat pump and work it as a hybrid system, depending on the bivalent point, which decides which technology starts working. The heat pump technology is usually air to water, some of them brine to water, which is then the the geothermal energy. We have also air to air machines, which are limited to 12 kilowatts, but we also have air to air machines, which are able to deliver domestic hot water. And of course, direct exchange to water machines. And all these heat pump technologies, they have to follow different tests. First of all, this starts when you want to enter the certification scheme is the first admission test. This is where you have to make sure, but you have to prove that your machine is following the eco design rules. And later on, usually after 1 year, it's starting with the surveillance tests. And I will explain that later on. Of course, we have the periodic testing approach depending on your approach. So you can decide whether if you do the 1 out of 5 approach or the 1 off the approach. And all these different tests, all these first admission tests, surveillance tests, and the periodic testing approaches, they all contain efficiency testing, operating, and sound tests, which are following the standard rules, which I will explain next slide. Yes, and as I mentioned before, I'm working also as an inspector, so I would like to talk about audits, the factory inspection and the physical inspection, which is different, and I will explain that later. All these requirements are defined in lots of documents, which you can find on the heatpump.eu website. But I think the most important 3 ones is the main document, which defines the scheme rules, and then the Annex A, which defines the testing rules, and the Annex B, which defines the requirements for the factory inspections and factory production controls. And they were just renewed in March, and you can find them on the website online. Okay, just to give you a short overview about the most common tested and certified products, most of them follow the EN 14511 and EN 14825 to define the test requirements for setting up the heat pumps, installing them, defining the measurement accuracy, and also defining the test points, which have to be measured depending on the temperature level. It's either low temperature, medium, or high temperature. and also the climate zone. And of course, for the domestic hot water, we following the EN 16471, and for the sound power measurement, we follow the two standards, 12102-1 for the central heating and -2 for the domestic hot water ones. And of course, I mentioned the groundwater heat pumps. We're following this standard here, and all of them in the current version. So let's have a look on the testing procedure. I created this table a while ago, and I still had to adjust it a bit, but I would like to focus now on the column B and C, so which is admission and surveillance, because I would like to point out the difference between that. When we're talking about the space heating or the space cooling test, the effort at the first admission is higher than the effort during the surveillance test. That means if you have, for example, a heat pump which has a certification for a low and medium temperature heat pump, or which want to have a certification, then you have to test both of them. Then you have to test, for example, for an air-to-water heat pump, A7W35 and A7W55. And if you do the surveillance later on 1 year, you just have to do either one of them, which is defined usually by the certification body. So the effort will be lower. Same for space cooling tests. Then it is only one application of the two space cooling test points. Different is it with the sound power level test. You have to repeat the sound power level test, depending if it's it doesn't matter if it's a central heating or domestic hot water device. The operating tests, and this is, we had a big discussion with that within my team. So what are actually operating tests? Because according to 15411, there are actually more operating tests defined. But if we talk within the HP KEYMARK scheme group about the operating test, we talk about the starting tests. We're talking about shutting off the transfer medium flow and the complete power supply. We're not talking about the boundaries, for example, which takes a long time for the test institute. And yeah, if we do the surveillance, we have either shutting off the transfer medium flow or complete power supply failure. So you can see that the difference between admission and surveillance is just the amount of necessary testing. Yeah, if we talk about domestic hot water devices, it is pretty similar. The sound tests have to be done both completely during admission and surveillance. If we do the tapping test, so the actual performing test, it is similar, and during the operating test, you can compare it to the central heating devices, then you have to do one less. But actually during the domestic hot water test, you have to do pretty much the same during first admission and surveillance test. Yeah, and combination heat pumps, they actually follow both previous slides, depending which technology you're talking about. Central heating and domestic hot water are both tested differently. The central heating, still admission, you have more effort, and during surveillance you have less effort. And for the domestic hot water and the sound test, you have to do all the tests. So this is the different tests which needs to be done for the admission and the surveillance. And what do we do during the test? I told you that we're following the 14511 and 14825 test basically. So this is a typical test point for the evaluation of the volume flow during A7W25. And this is, it's actually A2W35. And so this is, we're just following the standard rules and testing each point according to 14511 and according to 14825, which is necessary to calculate the seasonal efficiency to follow the ERP rules. And during the sound measurements test, we have the same situation. You have the heat up phase. You have the standby power inputs where you measure the losses actually. Then you have the tapping profile where you measure the actually tapping efficiency. and the V40 tests. And as I said, all of them have to be performed during first admission and during the surveillance test. The calculation methods, no differences. We still follow the rules, and this is what needs to be presented to the certification body later on, combined in the report, so that everybody can see what was tested, what was the result, and what is the declared value. The time frame is approximately 1 week for the testing of a central heating device. It depends on the kind of device, if it's a split unit or it's a monoblock unit. It's also depending on the size of the machine. Combination heat pump takes usually 2 weeks because you have to test both. You have to test the central heating function and the domestic hot water function. And for the domestic hot water, it's usually 1 week. This is depending on the hysteresis on the set point. So if you have a large hysteresis, for example, 10 or 15 degrees, the tests usually take longer. The standby phase takes then way more than 48 hours. Usually it's something between 70 and 80. We have seen that, and this is extending the test time. Common problems are, of course, everywhere are problems during testing, we have to set up the compressor frequencies during the test, especially for the 14825 tests. Which means we need the possibility to access the system or the inverter. This is done usually by an external computer or laptop provided by the manufacturer, or it is done within the control unit with a special password to enter the setup area. And yeah, sometimes we experience problems with the measurement technology inside the heat pumps. So we have a defect sensor, or the problem is that we're measuring for a long time. For example, the domestic hot water tests are fully automated usually. So that means you start the test, for example, on Monday, and then you finish it on Friday or the Saturday. And then you see that there was a mistake with the temperature setup, or there was the temperature sensor was not working well. And yeah, this is a pity then, because then you wasted lots of time and you have to repeat the tests. Usually we install the heat pumps according to manufacturer's instructions. But if you have a split system, it is important to use the right refrigerant pipes. Right diameter is really important, and we also need information about the refrigerant amount and the type, if it must be filled by the test institute, as well as the exact parameters for testing. As I said, compressor frequency and so on. It is very important, and the computer or equal system to control the frequencies, and especially for the sound measurements, and I will focus on that now. The fitting duct system, it's important. It must be the correct shape and the correct material. So let's talk about the sound measurements. We have usually, this is an example for a domestic hot water pump, we have usually a ducted system installed on the top of the machine, and this duct must be a reverberant piping. And if it's not a reverberant piping, or it is an absorbing piping, this can have an influence on the measurement results. And so it is defined in 12102-2 that the material must be reverberant, so that the sound emission, which is coming from the actual machine can't be absorbed during the measurement. And we measure the actual sound measurements. So this is sometimes very difficult to install, because the standard defines that you need lots of space above the heat pump, and some of these heat pumps are even 2.30 meters tall. So you need quite a high acoustic chamber to be able to install it according to the standard. And yeah, that's sometimes a problem, but usually a solution is found everywhere. And yeah, the other thing is split units. Then you have to do 2 tests for the outdoor unit and for the indoor unit. Of course, usually the indoor units are very, very silent, especially if we're talking about hydraulic split. So if we have, for example, an R290 unit, which is constructed as a monoblock device, and it's just working with an hydraulic unit which is sitting inside, then there is almost no noise coming from the hydraulic unit. and it is almost impossible to measure it because it is below 20, 22 or 23 dBA. If we talk about the test conditions, it is actually the same as defined in the eco design rules. We're testing at the 55 flow temperature, but under the seat point conditions. So that means that we have the partial load conditions with the corresponding compressor frequency. Yeah. The sound measurements are a bit more difficult during because we have to measure actually 3 points, which is 25, 40, and 50 degrees. I'm sorry for the format, but I think there is point 1 is missing. It's 25 degrees. So we have to heat up the machine with cold water up to 25 degrees. Then we have to do a short tapping to make sure that we have actually 25 degrees in the tank. Then we do the sound measurement. Then we start heating up again up to 40 degrees. Repeat again, do a small tapping, do the sound measurement, and then we do it with 50 degrees. So that usually takes a whole day to do that testing with installing, with heating up, and some of you might know that some domestic hot water heat pumps, they really have low heating capacities, just a few hundred watts. So it really takes a long time to do this testing. As you can see here, it was something like 7 hours. And yeah, this takes a whole day. Yes, so that was testing procedures for first admission, surveillance tests, and sound measurements. And now I would like to focus on the factory production control. During the factory production control, which usually happens after the certification, we focus on the production circuits, on the production line in the production plant. And this, why we're doing it, we're doing it to ensure that the product is being produced according to the HPA KEYMARK rules, of course, and make sure that the product is produced as we have tested it. And if the production plant contains a ISO 9000 certification, we can do an abbreviated examination, but we're still focusing on some points of the document parts. So it's a bit small. I hope you can read it, but what you can see here are 3 pages from the factory production control report, which you can find also online on keymark.eu. And you will find several requirements. The first slides, the first pages are mostly information with where is it, the address. Then it contains a list of the certified product, which is really important. Then the persons who are in charge for the quality and who are in charge for the audit. But after chapter 3 and 4, we're talking about requirements for the actual production. And so that is mostly our focus during the inspections, that we check the measurement instruments which are used during the production or in the production line. Most of them are electrical tests, for example, the leakage test with an inert gas, the refrigerant filling station to make sure that it is the right amount of refrigerant, and of course the labeling and the information so that the product can be identified through the complete production process and also afterwards in the storage. And yeah, of course, also when it is installed at the end consumer, and there is a problem, that you can identify the production date and see what has happened at that day. And yeah, as I said, if there is an existing ISO 9000 certification, we can do an abbreviated examination, but we're still focusing on the declaration of conformity and the responsibilities. This is one of the most important documents a manufacturer has to issue, and you're defining usually the regulations and the directives which the product is following. And it is important that it contains the right content, the right standards, or the right regulations and directives, but also it is important who is responsible to sign it and who's creating it. And this is sometimes difficult to find out. So if you're talking to an employee, of the company and I'm asking you, okay, what's the content of the declaration of conformity and who is signing it, then nobody knows, and then it takes a long time to find out who is responsible. That we discover that sometimes, so this is why we focus on that. Of course, also working instructions which are defined for the production line especially. So for example, there is defined how to perform a leakage test. How do you do it, with which gas, which pressure, and so on. And also the qualification of the staff, especially during the brazing process or soldering, if applicable, depending on the device. Is there a qualification? Is there training? What do they do if there is a leakage? Do they do an extra training and so on? The complete audit duration takes about approximately 5 to 6 hours. It's a bit depending on how fast it goes. Some plants are a bit larger, so you have to walk a lot through the halls, and that takes a lot of time. But usually it's done within 6 hours. And yeah, the other thing is the physical inspection. And the physical inspection, we do not focus so much on the production and on the quality management of the plant. We're focusing more on the product. So what we're doing there is we're trying to identify each part of the product and make sure that it is the same as it was during the initial type test. So we check for the compressor, we check for the expansion valve, heat exchanger, condenser, evaporator, whatever you find in the machine, we check for it. We check dimensions. So if you have, for example, the same opening and for the ventilation, etc. We also check for the software version. I know that, or we know that there is not a big influence by the software version, because maybe most of the time the software version is just updated for comfort issues, or maybe to delete some errors which were in there. It is not affecting the efficiency, at least it should not, but we're still checking it. We're checking it during the initial inspection, and then we're checking it during the physical inspection. So if there is an update, you can see the development between that, but there shouldn't be any influence on the performance. If applicable, we can also do a picking. That depends on how many plants you have, how many production plants you have, and how many devices you have certified, and which approach you're following. I've mentioned the 1 out of 5 approach, and I have mentioned the one-off approach. If you're doing the one-off approach, you don't have to do a picking. But if you do the 1 out of 5 approach, you have to do the picking every following year. And the picking is done according to the certification body. So they tell us, the inspectors, which device shall be picked. And then I'm usually going to the storage or directly to the production line. And I'm picking one of the devices, checking the serial number, marking it, and then it is sent to the next test laboratory of your choice, and it is testing according to the rules and according to the standards I have just explained earlier in this presentation. So that is basically it. That is the testing procedures for most of the common heat pump devices which are certified in the HP KEYMARK frame, and this is inspection and physical inspection for the power plants, for the production plants, sorry. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free.
Thank you, Mario. Thank you. And yeah, remember to ask any questions you may have so far in the Q&A chat, and we will answer them right at the end. I will now move to Tom Lapere. So Tom Lapere is a senior certification officer at Daikin Europe. He will present the voice of Daikin Europe as a KEYMARK certification holder. So he will share the benefits, but also the challenges of having certified quality products on the market. So Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I will share my screen. Okay. I hope you can see it. Mm-hmm. Okay, great. All right. So Good morning, everyone, from my side as well. So welcome to the third part or fourth part of this webinar, Daikin Europe as a case study, voice of the manufacturer. First of all, a big thanks to the KEYMARK Secretariat for giving us the opportunity to participate in this webinar and share with you the voice of the manufacturer in the heat pump KEYMARK certification process. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Tom Lapere from Daikin Europe, as already said, responsible for the voluntary product certification within the EU area. Let me start by giving some background information on why we have stepped into the heat pump KEYMARK back already in 2016. I will try to give an insight on our initial and current motivation to participate, as well as a further look into the benefits of the scheme in general, and for us as a certificate holder in particular. Secondly, I will also tackle the challenges we faced so far and the ways the heat pump KEYMARK scheme provides an answer to those challenges. Okay, so let's have a look at why Daikin stepped into the heat pump KEYMARK. So we have been one of the early adopters of the scheme. We have achieved the first certificate back in 2016. I think the reason for this long-standing partnership is an obvious common interest to establish a quality label which is widely recognized in the European heat pump market. When we have a look at the heat pump KEYMARK objectives, as already explained by Tarik, the scheme was established to create a single certificate which is open to all interested parties, with a transparent character and with a strong recognition as a trustworthy label. At the same time, the certificate should be in line with European regulation, eco-design, and subsequently apply the minimum requirements published in there. We as a manufacturer, on the other hand, equally were in favor of a single certificate, basically to cover the large portfolio for residential heat pumps, as this would allow us to cut costs, which would in the end benefit the customer. We're also much in favor of a recognized pan-European scheme, eliminating as much as possible the need to apply to local authorities with local schemes for different certification schemes or incentive schemes. We are in favor as well of the independency we have on the stakeholder sides. So no longer having to go via one party, be it now certification body, test lab, or auditor, as this allows us to have the freedom of choice when partnering up with the stakeholder. Let me elaborate a bit further on the benefits, on the additional benefits it brings us. So we believe that the KEYMARK product certification can contribute to the energy transition by promoting this energy efficient and high quality products, harmonizing the standards across Europe and providing confidence to consumers. For us as well, what is important is, for example, was the non-mandatory character of the marking, especially seeing the growing complexity of our product portfolio and the introduction of the so-called dual production, where we have to move or divide the production of the same material in different production sites. We were especially keen on not being fixed to a mandatory character of marking. We also believe that the KEYMARK scheme is a customer-oriented scheme. And the manufacturer has a clear voice in steering the scheme. At the same time, we also see a flexible attitude to incorporate market opportunities and demands with a short go-to-market implementation time in the scheme rules itself. To give an example, with the evolution of local building regulations, for example, in France, to allow certified values in calculators on new domains or applications such as space cooling or domestic hot water, we've seen a quick response from the scheme to incorporate those new trends and allow them to have them certified as performances in the database. Now let's move on to the challenges we had to overcome with the certification process. So as already said, one of the first hurdles we had to take was finding a way to certify the whole of our residential portfolio. And we had two concerns here. So how can we cover the many models we put on the market, while at the same time limiting the number of tests for admission as much as possible? And secondly, there's a requirement to have certified performances easily retrievable, and as such have our customers grant easy access to the database through the product identifier they know. We have in the market many product identifiers. We have a device which is put on the market with its product number, which is basically the number you will find on the nameplate or on the rating plate. On the other hand, we have an internal material name, which is more like an umbrella name to cover product numbers from different manufacturing locations, but basically the same material, and with only minor model modifications. For example, a software version which needs to be upgraded could result in another product number, but not in another material name. And our marketing department then commercializes or promotes the materials with so-called commercial names, as mentioned on our, for example, on our dealer supporting tools or commercial documentation. The KEYMARK scheme provides a solution there for the first concern we had with the model classification. Also already explained, we have the type and subtype classification, which allows us to group models which comply to the requirements of the subtype, but different in application modes, such as, for example, heating only or reversible, with backup heater, without backup heater, power supply, and so on. For the second concern, when we talk about the identifier, the database allows us to search both on only a fraction or a part of the identifier. So it's easily retrievable on both product number and material name. Oh, sorry. A bit too fast. When we then look at our challenges, but that's more of an internal insight. We have to keep our portfolio as slim, as limited as possible to avoid the constraints or the headaches at the certification site. Secondly, we need to make sure that how we put our materials in the market is in line with how we put it in the database, and as well as how we put it in commercial documentation. A next hurdle is the organization of the annual factory production control. This is a requirement for all the manufacturing sites, but to meet the ever-changing market demands and to achieve the sales objectives, we need to choose more and more also for local production at more than one facility. So this has led to the current situation where we have a portfolio which is now spread over 5 facilities. And as well, this leads to an increase of the factory production control. Of course, this has to be organized on an annual basis. There again, I think KEYMARK brings a solution with the creation of a pool of auditors. So it is for us fairly easy to organize as a manufacturer or certificate holder to make sure that the agendas are matched both from the auditor as well as from the factory side. As well as we believe that the annual factory production control is an extra external instrument to guarantee that our models are produced according to the same quality standards. When we then look at the Daikin challenge, we believe that it's a benefit to act on possible observations or non-conformities which have been reported by the auditor, as well as the sampling requirement we have to fulfill is a challenge. It's put there on the screen and already mentioned by Tarik and Mario. We need to make sure that when we have a split system which is sampled, that basically the outdoor and indoor unit are there at the storage room of one of the factories, so that it's easy for the auditor to make the sampling on just one location. Then the hurdle of the testing. Once the models are sampled for admission or for surveillance testing, we have to organize it. That's you have as a certification department or section have to make sure that we are there in line, especially when we talk about new developments, to make sure that the KEYMARK certificate is achieved at the time of the sales launch, because sales launch of a new product could potentially be delayed because we will not launch, or we cannot launch without a heat pump KEYMARK certificate. So it's a prerequisite for the launching of a new development. There, I think we believe that the scheme is well organized because with one test report you can certify or apply up to 5 subtypes, regardless of the time this report was achieved. And that's an important one, I believe, where we sometimes have to make use of to make sure that timing is kept. On the other hand, sampling is considered per number of subtypes, not per application. So the sample size applies regardless of the time elapsed. That was said. Also there, the pool of test labs is constantly growing, and this gives us the opportunity to work out some fallback scenarios in case one of the test labs we usually work with has a full agenda or has only limited test capacity. The challenge we have to overcome is to find a match between the availability of the mass production models and the availability of the test rooms. The fourth hurdle is within the application process is the input of our official performances, our data values in the Heat Pump KEYMARK database. So the principle we adhere is certified data equals eco-design data. Again, as a concern, a proper internal coordination is crucial, as the issuing of the data is one of the last steps done in a new development process, so by our design departments. As such, we need to make sure that there are no hiccups between exporting the data from our database and importing it back into the KEYMARK database. So correct maintenance of our master data management, of our master data, is therefore crucial. Then as a final hurdle, fifth hurdle, I believe we have seen that Europe has been a patchwork of schemes, listings, incentive schemes, certification schemes with different eligibility criteria. We believe that the KEYMARK scheme, the Heat Pump KEYMARK scheme, already took major steps in having the certificate fully accepted in countries or major markets such as France and Germany. It is a base of it is accepted as a base of the certified performances as well for example, for entry in the French EPBD calculators, and therefore fully equivalent to already established schemes in the French market. And so that gives us the opportunity to certify a heating model only once for one scheme in Europe, or at least for those countries which have already adhered to the scheme. Moreover, we also see that there is a big improvement in the simplification of the certification process, with allowing KEYMARK certificate being a part of that particular process. We see that in some cases the tested evidence, the test report, and the classification into subtypes is accepted for having the range we want to cover tested, or at least to cover the tested or the test requirement for a particular scheme in different countries. So the testing part is basically covered. What is important is that we need to make sure that KEYMARK is taking additional steps for those certification programs or incentive schemes where additional requirements are put. We are much in favor, of course, of a lean process where the certificate could basically work for all schemes in Europe without having to go through another round of documentation, acceptance, or verification by yet another organization or body. So that brings us to my conclusion, or to our conclusion for this webinar. We believe that there is, when we look at the heat pump KEYMARK, we see the following benefits. It's an assurance of quality. The KEYMARK certificate is a voluntary third-party certificate for products and services, demonstrating to end users that a product is in full conformity with the relevant standards. On energy efficiency, the scheme also promotes the importance of certified products and their role in creating secure and energy efficient supply and usage. Using the KEYMARK certified products can help reduce energy consumption and promote as such energy efficiency. For the manufacturer, it means that there is a reduced admin and testing costs. It gives us immediate access to many of the heat pump support schemes, reducing basically testing costs for us as a manufacturer or trader. It's accepted in many EU countries. Once tested and certified, KEYMARK products are accepted, making it easier for manufacturers and traders to sell their products across Europe. And there is a big alignment with European standards. The KEYMARK is an important quality label for residential heat pumps, demonstrating the quality and is in line with the eco-design regulation. So as such, the KEYMARK can contribute to the energy transition in Europe. Again, repeating my last, the comments of the last hurdle. At the same time, we are a strong defender of further acceptance in those markets where local certifications are the reference. And therefore, we believe the next steps will be, or the next step will be to seek a direct link between future incentive schemes and the heat pump KEYMARK certificate. That's it. So thank you for listening. And I'm open for any question. So I will pass the word back now to you, Danaé.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Thank you for sharing your experience, and it's really great to have the manufacturer's perspective regarding the Heat Pump KEYMARK certification. I'll take back control of the screen. And we are now ready for our last presentation of this webinar, which is Tarik will present some of the figures regarding the scheme recognition and the benefits of the certification.
Thank you, Danaé. Thank you, Tom, and Mario before, for the very interesting presentations. And Tom, your last slide is about recognition is a good transition for this last presentation about recognition. And indeed, the first slide that I will show you about recognition is to share with you these numbers that they speak for themselves, where you see the growth of the number of certificate holder. So within a year, this is the comparison in June 2022 with the June 2023 numbers. And you can see that the number of certificate holders increased by 40%. We have today 106 certificate holders. So 106, let's say, companies, businesses are certified and referring and using the KEYMARK to demonstrate quality and to demonstrate performance. These certifications, these 106 certificate holders proposed to the market 1,487 certificates. It represents 1,587 certificates, again, an increase in 1 year of 38% of the number of certificates. And these certificates are covering almost 7,000 models that are certified. So it's a 40% increase in 1 year of the number of models that are covered by Heat Pump KEYMARK certificates. So these numbers, we can have a lot of conclusions, but if we focus on the recognition, this is demonstrating clearly that the KEYMARK is matching the main objective of recognition, of harmonization, and to have it as the unique way and solid way of demonstrating quality again, and to be referred to in different subsidies or in any market when there is a need to demonstrate quality or performance of heat pump equipment. So I showed you a comparison year to year, and I can show you how these certificates was evolving from the first certificate that was issued to Daikin back in 2016, as Tom was explaining, and where we in 2022, I said earlier today when we opened this webinar that we have a new record in terms of annual new certificates. We have exceeded the number of 300. So in 2022, and just to give you an idea of the trend, just in Q1, so the first quarter of this year, we have already recorded 100, more than 100 new certificates. So the trend is still quite importantly growing, let's say, and this is very important also to demonstrate the recognition of the scheme in Europe. To summarize, to give you an overview of the recognition, I think now you start to be familiar with this map. Formally, we have 10 countries in Europe that is recognizing formally the KEYMARK and referring to the KEYMARK. We had recently, early this year, the Netherlands joining the group of the KEYMARK users, let's say. And for the Netherlands, we are finalizing the recognition to include also the domestic hot water. So the discussion are ongoing. We have also opening new discussions with other countries in the Nordics and in Europe to have this the scheme also recognized and adopted formally and to have it as a reference, because it is adopted, it is used almost in any country in the Eurozone or even beyond. But what is interesting, and I fully hear what Tom was referring to, is to have this KEYMARK scheme referenced in the subsidies or any initiatives related to support the installations of a heat pump. So this is definitely our work is really to expose as much as we can the KEYMARK scheme. So work in progress. The recognition is there, but we need to develop further. We need to have the KEYMARK also recognized when there is, let's say, a scheme or a requirement already in place at a country level. I think a good example to illustrate what I'm trying to explain is the EHPA quality label. So quality label is referred in specific countries like Austria and Switzerland. So we are building a very strong link between the quality label and the KEYMARK to not confuse the market. So first of all, definitely, if you have the KEYMARK, you can apply for a quality label, and de facto, it means that you don't have to do something specific except to apply to the quality label and to obtain the quality label. So somehow the KEYMARK is recognized in those markets, even if they are not referring directly to the KEYMARK. So the KEYMARK remain the foundation of any certification or quality requirements. This is very important to understand. We will have always these differences, these additional requirements from a country or from subsidy plan that will require something additional that is specific to a local situation or regional requirement. But these are these little differences that we keep on trying to raise to have a lean or a fully aligned requirements. It's not easy. We are in Europe. That's not it's not new. It's not only specific to the KEYMARK and the heat pumps sector. So I wanted to show you also the KEYMARK in terms of recognition and how where the heat pump sector is in the middle of all these KEYMARK certificates with the thermal insulation or the solar. You can see that we are now as a heat pump KEYMARK sector representing 32% of all the certificates that are issued for the KEYMARK schemes. So this is also first a proof that the heat pump KEYMARK sector is very attentive to the quality, to demonstrate performance, to align with the requirements that are dictated and elaborated by eco design, and then the European standards that are also developed. So this is very important to see that we are really in a good position, in a good seat in terms of recognition and in terms of KEYMARK as a KEYMARK heat pump. It is important to see that we are positioned in this ranking, let's say. We talked about the KEYMARK recognition. What is key as well is the development and the visibility and the access to the data for the consumer, for regulator, for an installer. So for your information, we have a dedicated website. We have also, you will have a free access to anyone who wants to look at a certificate, to look at a reference. We can do a search. We can go, we can download the certificate. We can ask questions to the Secretariat or to the certification body about a specific model or a subtype or any testing or performance that was done. So we have this important transparency that makes also the recognition even stronger. The fact that we can have one centralized database where you can find all the information about the products. And I can tell you that this database is in work in progress, because we are always trying to improve the database with the communication team at EHPA. We are trying to have different languages, to translate, to add additional information, to link this database with eventually another database. So that's continuously what we're trying to do. This is some screenshots of the database. I will finish just to remind the simple benefits. Straightforward third-party certification supports purchasing decisions. This is obvious, and most of all, we look at the purchasing decision. We want to speed up the purchasing decision for some parts of the stakeholders, but also what is important is that we give confidence to the consumer that they are buying a product that is of quality and that is also energy consumption responsible, and this is very important. The quality mark can be used again. This is really the key to enter the main markets, European markets. We are still working again to open even other and to build other bridges with subsidies or any quality requirements that may arise that may be in place. This is definitely something we're doing. And important, the third point, and it reflects and it takes back to our mission as a secretariat, is to have the transparency of the scheme. So the certificate holders, the certified products are publicly visible and accessible. So this is also part of the base of having a strong recognition in Europe, which is the case today. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Tarik. Okay, so we are at the end of the presentations. If you have any questions about this last part or any of the presentations you saw today, this is your time to ask questions in the chat. Remember to add the name of the speaker you would want to answer your question. And while you are doing that, I will already start with one question we got. One of the participants is asking, what is approximately the cost of a certification? Let's assume new producer in line of products with different power, 6 to 24 kilowatt heat pump. Yes, this is a very big question, but also a very general one.
Well, maybe when I look at that range, I think we are below 10 subtypes. So with 10 subtypes, you only have to submit 2 test reports. So a test report on a device, depending on the machine, on the type of the heat pump, you will have more conditions to test when we have to consider a space heater or combination heater, when you have to consider domestic hot water performances. So all those additional applications will add up to the cost. But of course, yeah, how to say, a test condition you will have to make sure that how to say, for new tests, Mario explained this very well. I think you have a bit of more test conditions to cover. A water test is always the same. You have to consider a domestic hot water test as being one single test. You cannot pick different conditions there, as is the case for space heating or space cooling. Yeah. With this certification test or cost for testing, you also have to consider, of course, that there is a fee to be paid on an annual basis to enter the scheme, as well as there is an admin fee to consider by the certification body, and possibly a small fee is there to consider for the audit. But of course, all these fees have different prices, so indeed a bit difficult to put a price tag on it.
Yeah, it will depend greatly on the situation, and thank you, Tom, for outlining all the parameters that will be considered to provide with a cost. But definitely approaching the certification body and the laboratory they can give you a really precise cost depending on your products and your situation and number of production locations. Where are the production locations? So there are a lot of parameters. So I think it would be wiser to share your information with a certification body of your choice to give you the cost. I don't have it anyway. I cannot give you the cost.
Right, and this is one of the first steps, is to contact the certification body. And this is great because it also leads me to one of the other questions, which was contact person details for further information and questions. So here you have our website. You can scan the code to access it. You also have our social media. So if you don't follow us already, feel free to do so to receive updates. And also our contact details here, and the EHPA contact details as well. So if you're looking for whatever was mentioned during this presentation, list of certification bodies, list of test labs to contact them and ask questions, you can find them on the website.
And the same in terms of recognition. I receive every day questions about what about this country, or what about this scheme, or what can I do? Do not hesitate to ask the question, because again, we have also different situations in terms of recognition of KEYMARK. So do not hesitate to send me an email, and I can clarify to you, or at least point you the right person to discuss specifically for this specific country or specific situation. So do not hesitate for the recognition to contact us. This is really not a problem.
Exactly. So I don't know if any of you have more questions. While you might be thinking about that, I will also share this slide. So we need your input. We also need your feedback, because if I didn't say this already, this is our first KEYMARK webinar. So we kindly invite you to scan the QR code on the screen and tell us what you think, what we can improve, but also to receive the materials of the webinar once it's over, so the recording and the presentations. So while you're scanning it and maybe filling out the form, Tarik, I don't know if you have anything else to add?
Yeah,
or any of the speakers, actually.
Yeah, I would like to thank again Mario and Tom and Danaé, of course, for the very good information. And I would like to thank all who joined this morning. It's really nice to see that many people are interested in the scheme, and that they can dedicate. I know your agendas are super busy, so I'm very happy to see that many people joining the webinar. We'll have in the future. Danaé has already in mind some new webinars with different topics, with eco-design, with recognition for specific countries. We'll have always a voice of the manufacturer, and fantastic labs like Mario to join and to tell us the truth about what is happening in the labs. So thank you very much, all of you. Maybe Mario and Tom, if you want to say something, of course, please feel free. Go ahead.
No, thank you again. I think it was a very interesting introduction to the KEYMARK scheme, and I think yeah, we as already mentioned, I think we can also be open to all questions. So if any of the participants would need some more information, please address the secretariat, and it will be passed on towards, for example, me.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, also thank you from my side. It was a pleasure to give the presentation here and watching your presentations. And I think, yeah, it's I think it depends from case to case, and it's always good to contact directly the certification body, as already said, or contact the test lab. It's better to contact the certification body first, and sometimes it's good to contact them both at one time, arrange a meeting if possible. We have done that before, and it was easier to solve problems or clearness. Yeah.
Great. So I see no more questions in the chat, and I see that we're done quite early, so it's good. We can all take an early lunch break. Again, from my side too, I would like to thank Tarik, Tom, and Mario for their valuable insight, and of course, everyone who joined as a participant. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in one of our upcoming events, seminars, webinars, etc. and have a great rest of the day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.